Good afternoon and welcome to today's OR Today webinar. New year, new momentum, 3 red flags costing hospitals time and money and how to fix them. Today we are joined by Surgical Solutions Betty Casey, SVP of Clinical Operations, and Frank Majorwitz, partner at Fibertech Renovo. OR Today would like to thank our sponsor, Surgical Solutions. Based in Overland Park, Kansas, Surgical Solutions is a trusted leader in on-site surgical support services, specializing in non-clinical surgical services, staffing and sterile processing. They deliver tailored solutions for a broad range of surgery centers. So for more information, please visit surgical-solutions.com. Now, today's webinar is eligible for one continuing education hour from the California Board of Registered Nurses, and you can obtain your certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1CE certificate, and you'll be able to download your certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Now, I just want to give a quick mention about our upcoming virtual training course on how to become a medical laser safety officer. The next MLSO course is taking place in April, and that's 18th and 19th. So for more details and registration, please visit medicalsafety.com. Let's kick off today's webinar by giving away one of our OR Today Live lunch bags to the attendee that can tell me the answer to the following trivia question. January is National Soup Month. What region, not state, of the US is typically known for its clam chowder? Answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard, and I'll reveal the winner and the answer at the end of the webinar. We will have a live Q&A at the end of today's presentation, so please submit your questions anytime using the questions feature on your webinar dashboard. As I mentioned earlier, our presenters today are Betty Casey and Frank Majorwitz. So Betty, you may begin whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Linda. And funny you mentioned clam chowder. I actually had that this week for lunch. So it is definitely soup season. So thank you, everyone, for finding the time on your very busy day to join us. I'm very excited to talk a little bit today with one of my guests here, Frank, from Fibertech and from Renovo, to speak to us a little bit about repair. So I'm myself, Betty Casey, and I am the Chief Nursing Officer and Senior Vice President of Clinical Operations with Surgical Solutions. And we are a company, as we go to the next slide, just a little highlight here, that really has the patients at the center of our care, working to improve the lives of all of those that we serve. We are in the ecosystem of surgical centers and surgical hospitals across the country. We do love to partner with our hospitals, our ASC teams, to provide passionate SPD and OR and endo care. Very much focused, as you know, from quality, efficiencies, and outcome, where the patient is always at our center of everything that we do. With that being said, I'm going to ask Frank to just quickly introduce himself, and then we'll head on out to the actual presentation. Frank?
Yeah, thanks, Betty. Hi, everybody. My name is Frank Majorwitz, and I'm one of the original founders and of a company called Fibertech Medical, and I still manage that division today. And as they had mentioned, we are part of the Renovo Solutions family. My background, I've been in the industry for almost over 35 years. I worked for Olympus as a technician back in the 80s. And so I've been hands-on involved in managing endoscopy equipment and surgical equipment for, well, since 1986. So a very long time. If you go to the next slide, I'll share a little bit of a snapshot. So currently today, the company Fibertech, we provide service and support for all brands and models of flexible and rigid endoscopes, surgical cameras, power equipment, and surgical instrumentation. So we have our hands on a lot of different pieces of equipment, very familiar with damage trends and things of that sort. We're ISO 13485 certified, and we also spend a lot of time focusing on education productions like this for our customers to help them improve their operating efficiencies.
Thank you, Frank. We look forward to hearing your thoughts and your insight on what we can do to help reduce costs and delays and repairs. Our learning objectives, just as the requirement for our CEUs, is to number one, be able to identify practical Q1 readiness strategies to reduce delays and improve surgical day predictability in 2006. By the way, Happy New Year's to everyone. Second of all is to recognize key driver preventable downtime opportunities that will affect your workflow, your readiness, and be able to mitigate those tactics if that should happen. Number 3, we're going to be identifying and understanding how major repairs, such as level 3 and 4 for scopes, especially those endo-GI scopes, can impact your operations, cause case disruption, and most of all, really impact your budget. And then number 4, we'll be describing some KPI tracking opportunities for you to track your repair, really work with your repair company to be able to plan for support for not only the occurrences and the avoidance of repair, but also to be able to understand what your capital needs are if you need more equipment. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you partner together. And then last but not least is being able to identify through some simple red flags, a checklist to spot in your facility what you can do to help avoid these red flags. All right, so a lot of great things taking place today. For the agenda, we're going to start out with flag number 1. We call these red flags, losing OR hours every day. Number 2, we'll be looking at your equipment readiness so that you're not always in a scramble or at what we call a firestorm every day. Trying to be more proactive versus reactive when it comes to scope repairs and scope care. In addition with your equipment care, Frank's going to talk a lot about some of the proactiveness that we can do as clinicians in the space that we work at. And flag number 3, making sure you're measuring the right things and not the wrong things. Sometimes we do so much data collection, but we fail to really be collecting the right data or being able to trend what that data is telling us. So hopefully you'll get those learnings today in our presentation. So we're going to kick it right off and get started because we've got a lot to talk about this afternoon. We're going to start out first with avoiding red flag number 1. And this is to ask yourself this question: is your hospital losing hours every day without realizing it for it? So as we dive into that, there's the chat side. Please welcome anything that you want to add into the chat that we're not addressing or you want us to address. Just make sure you add your information in the chat. So underneath the resolution for red flag number 1, these are some ideas that we put together from our experience, both in the clinical as well as in the repair space, of some common OR delay drivers. One thing that we have discovered that really holds back us being successful in caring for our patients and getting our day started is missing items. Nothing's more frustrating than go into a case and not have what you need, or being able to set up something and the equipment is not there or available, or there's not enough of the equipment to go around. We'll also look at the turnover variability. How often are we turning over trays and instruments and equipment? Does that signal to us that perhaps we need to purchase more? Or does that signal to us that maybe we need to work on massaging the schedule a little bit better so that we can actually have more throughput, really identifying what the case needs are so we can shuffle cases and not be in last minute requests and needs and having to struggle getting those done. Tray readiness issues. Are my trays ready? Are they accurate? Nothing is more frustrating than to go into a case, pop it open, and find out it's not the right stuff in that tray that was labeled. I give the greatest example of a trauma that I was in a couple of years ago, and I popped open the tray and it was an open case that was inside. So not what you want to see when you're in the middle of a gunshot trauma. And then is your inventory proper? Again, Frank's going to talk to us a little bit about some of their data that they collect to try to help their partners understand if you need to purchase more or how you need to leverage the equipment that you have. Last but not one of the last things to look at is your communication breakdown. You know, is there communication between all the teams, whether it's from the operating room, SPD, and back up to the ORs, and the physicians and the schedulers on what exactly we need for cases, and do we have the right equipment, and is the equipment readily available and working? And then the last thing is the equipment that's not available already. Many times you go into a case and that particular thing might be one of a kind and it might be in another room, or it's not for repairs and nobody has really told anyone. There's no way of huddling to understand that information and sharing it. All right, we'll go ahead to the next slide. All right, Frank, you want to talk to us a little bit about some equipment delay drivers that you see?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, expanding on the previous slide and Betty's comments, it's all about the proper preparation. And what you're going to hear throughout today's entire presentation is, you know, the theme between the difference between being reactive and proactive. Okay, so you know, preventing, I call them, you know, Monday morning panic attacks, is all about being proactive. So some common drivers with the actual equipment itself is if the equipment's not in the proper operating condition, it wasn't checked before it was put away, It wasn't checked before it was set up in the procedure room. The equipment needs to be ready, whether it's a scope, a camera, or a power instrument, it needs to be ready and available at all times, okay? And to make that happen, it's, again, failing to meet the checks, okay, between the first case or the second case or any case at that point. Again, it needs to be properly checked by, the staff when it's put into the room, hung up on the rack or the cart, put in place for the next procedure. You want to make whatever test is appropriate for that piece of equipment to make sure it is indeed ready, okay? And doing all of this will avoid the last minute swaps. Again, there's nothing worse than trying to start a procedure, whether it be a colonoscopy or a more major orthopedic procedure. You turn on the device and it's not working. So the last minute swaps really are problematic in any scenario, okay? So, but these are the types of issues we're going to talk about throughout the presentation here.
Thank you, Frank. Now we have incorporated this time in our presentation poll questions. We really want to get your thoughts and your opinions on it. So the first question that you're going to have is, have you experienced an OR delay in the last 30 days due to equipment not being ready or available? And since the holiday, maybe some of you had a little quieter schedule, just think about it even longer. Have you experienced any delays? So please select yes, no, or not sure, and we'll have Linda come back to us and let us know what those results are. Linda?
Okay, I'm going to close the poll and share it with you. So you should now see the results.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, the good thing is that more people have not experienced it than have experienced it. Now, could it be with the delay, with the holidays that have been in place, perhaps, for it? Or is it because you all have identified some good best practices that hopefully you'll share in the chat room as we continue this webinar presentation? So great results, great participation. Thank you all very much for it. Frank, did you want to add anything before we go to the next slide about the poll results?
Maybe 60% of the watchers can log off now.
Don't do that. You need your CEO. You all know that. Okay, we're going to go on to the next slide, please. Resolution, red flag number 1. What does good look like for it? I'm just going to start out on this a little bit, and then Frank will join me in a little while, talk a little bit more about this. Is your equipment staged and verified? Is there clear escalation path whenever you have an issue or a problem? Is SPD and OR aligned before the wheels get into the room? And to be able to look at fewer surprises in a smoother day. I'm very excited that 60% of you have hopefully been experiencing very positive results with whatever interventions you've put in place for it. Many of these, I'm sure, are associated to some of the best practices that you may see here that have led to the success of that. Frank, did you need to add anything on this before we go to the next slide?
No, I think you covered it.
All right, next slide. Okay, so what are some of the quick wins that can be applied in looking at red flag number 1? Looking at readiness checkpoints. What does that look like? What is your testing? Are you following IFUs? Are you testing equipment before it goes into the room? Are you looking at it more, specifically when you're doing the decontamination and the assembly part to make sure it's ready to go for the next phase for it? So looking at identifying good readiness checkpoints. Being able to clear the no-go criteria. In other words, if there's a problem or issue, what does that look like? How is that communicated? And how are you, as it says in number 3, given that early escalation and late scrambling? Frank, anything from you on what you practices of the hospital partnerships that you have that may deal with how they communicate when their equipment is down that you're aware of?
Yeah, so if you look at the past couple of slides here, you're going to see I think we see a common theme going throughout this presentation. And it really is making sure that everyone in your staff that handles the equipment is properly trained. They understand it. They understand how it operates, and they know what to look for. So when you talk about readiness checkpoints, you need to understand what to look for, what to check. And what that actually means for the piece of equipment that you're dealing with. So, the good news is you're watching this presentation, so you all believe in education, you all believe in growing in the points that I just made. So I think really that is going to be a key driver throughout everything we're talking about. Is the big part of being proactive is understanding, training, and education, and we're going to drill that in again.
Great. Thank you, Frank. Certainly communication is key to everything that we do, and this is a great example of why that works. All right, next slide. Please add something to the chat room if you have any questions or anything you'd like to add in regard to that. All right, we're going to head to now avoiding red flag number 2, which is equipment readiness, reactive systems, and creating a reactive delay process for it. We'll go to the next slide and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I think one of the areas that we wanted to focus a little bit on, and I'm going to ask Frank to speak a lot to this, is really looking at endoscopes for it. I have to say that in my own career, I have found these scopes to be very difficult, not only to clean, to manage, and to make sure that they are safely cared for, because they are unbelievably delicate. And Frank is here to really show that to us. So Frank, if you want to speak a little bit about our friends, the endoscopes, and some of the things that you all recommend as a repair company. I know you see a lot of these. You've seen a lot with our customers that we send for it, and a lot of things we're very proactive on. So would you like to share a little bit and go over the slide with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we could talk an hour or two just about flexible endoscopes. But keep in mind the overall presentation here is about all the equipment you deal with, okay? But we do pick on endoscopes, and the reason being is out of all the equipment, cameras and power tools, the flexible endoscope, the GI endoscope, tends to be one of the more expensive devices, 2, one of the more fragile devices, and 3, as far as repair and maintenance goes, certainly one of the most expensive items to repair. So for that reason, the flexible endoscopes tend to always get more attention in any location. And I realize that some of you on the call might be in SPD, you might be in OR, so some of you may not even have the the fun of handling flexible endoscopes at all. But if you do come encounter with them, or if you do routinely already handle them, you just need to keep a few things in mind. Again, that they are very fragile, they are very expensive to repair. And as far as flexible endoscopes go, back to the routine checkpoints that we might talk about a little bit further in the presentation here. Every flexible endoscope is going to need to go out at least 1 or 2 times a year, just for routine normal wear and tear adjustments, okay? You'll never avoid that. It's like your car, every year you have to get an oil change. You eventually will have to change your brakes. You'll eventually have to put new tires on your car. And that's the same with an endoscope. Sooner or later, there will be wear and tear that is going to need to come out for an adjustment or a replacement of some component. So you will always, for that reason, you will always see your inventory of scopes any given month, 1 or 2 may be going out for one of these routine adjustments, okay? However, to that point, most endoscope damage is preventable, okay? If I had to give you a ballpark scenario, I would say that 80% of the endoscopes that we get in for repair are preventable accidents, user-related damage, and only 15 to 20% would be those normal wear and tear items that just need to come in for an update. Okay, so the good news in that is because it's preventable and such a high level of preventable damage, through education, through seminars like this, through increasing awareness, we can hopefully drive down those preventable types of damage. Okay, and again, the last point here is being proactive and not reactive. So with a lot of proactive steps that we're talking about now, and that we'll talk about in the future, I think a lot of these preventable mistakes can be eliminated.
Thank you, Frank. In the next slide, Frank's going to outline some of the actual common damage. So next slide, please.
Yeah, sure. So again, this is far from everything that should be on this list. And not to, we don't want to be picking on flexible endoscopes again, but back to what I said earlier, you have to highlight it because it's such a big part of anybody's budget, okay? So these are some of the more common reasons endoscopes would go out for repair. External leaks in the bending section sheath. That's at the distal tip of the insertion tube, the last 5 to 6 inches. The outer sheath is made of a thin rubber material. It's very prone to getting cut, pinholes and leaks in that area. Definitely an area you want to keep an eye on and keep sharp objects away from that particular part of the endoscope. Reduced angulations, that where the knobs, the angulation control knobs are loose. They may be too loose, they may be too tight. These types of issues, in some cases, can be normal wear and tear that are unavoidable. They just get loose over time and they need to come back in routinely for annual adjustments. And in other cases, it could be something that is preventable. You know, perhaps the scope is being over torqued, not coming out for enough routine maintenance, causing them to get overly tight. So, you know, that's another very common cause for endoscopes coming in for repair. You know, worn bending sections, again, causing tight control knobs. Distal end damage, very preventable type of damage. And whenever you see the word cracked or dented or chipped, that just means it was, I don't want to say mishandled in a bad way, but it was either dropped or something impacted that particular part of the scope. The distal tip of the flexible endoscope has glass lenses down there. It has a plastic cap at the end. If it accidentally slips out of your hand and hits the countertop or the floor, those items will chip and crack. So it's certainly an area of the scope that you want to pay attention to. And again, just whenever you're handling a scope, just again, another awareness point to exercise caution. Then there's internal damage. We see a lot inside the biopsy channel. Sometimes they come in with kinks where the insertion tube might have been over manipulated or over torqued or coiled up too tightly, and you know, leading to a kink or something inside the channel. And then also leaks. Leaks inside of the scope coming from the biopsy channel are very common as well, whether it be a sharp instrument. In most cases, a sharp instrument was being utilized, the forceps weren't closed all the way, or they were not in the best condition, causing gouges or cuts or scrapes inside the channels. Very common there. And then the last two, insertion tube damage. That would be external damage, whether something was ran over by a cart, closed accidentally in a door, the lid of the scope reprocessor, you know, pressed up against it, maybe a upper endoscopic procedure, the bite block fell out of the patient and they clamped down on the tube. So we see a lot of tubes come in that are kinked and dented and damaged as well. And those are things you should be proactive on. If you see a tube, if it looks like it's in bad shape, if you have a severe dent or kink in it, you want to send it out for repair, because those are the types of things that can lead to a Monday morning panic. Okay, so you see it's dented today, it still operates, you make the decision not to send it out, but it's only going to get worse. It's going to cause additional internal damage. And then what's going to happen is eventually the whole scope is going to not work one day, that you could have sent it out 3 weeks ago when you noticed it and had it fixed at that point. It also escalates the cost. You know, you might as well fix it now. It could be something minor now, but if you continue using it, it's only going to get worse and be a more expensive repair 2 months down the road. So again, back to the theme of the whole presentation here, you know, you want to be as proactive as possible to avoid those types of situations.
Thank you, Frank. And, you know, I'll add on that these scopes travel, as you all know. So they're on the road a lot. They're in emergency rooms, ICUs, at the bedside, and the clinic labs and the OR. So their risk is greater. And I always, I was talking to Frank earlier this week and mentioned that, you know, they look like they're tough when you look at them. But we're going to show you some pictures in a little bit that you can see how delicate these scopes actually are. So we'll head on to the next slide, Frank, to talk a little bit about you know, the importance of the dashboard and some of the information, as you were speaking about some proactiveness a few minutes ago, especially with the endo GI scopes for this is why you're coming to that conclusion of where the high risk is. So I don't know if you just quickly want to go over how important it is when you all get the scopes or the equipment or the power or whatever to work on, how you're tracking so that you can help customers understand where the problems are and how we can be proactive in working with our teams to alleviate or at least prevent those. So I don't know if you want to quickly kind of go over an example of your dashboard that you guys use at FiberTech.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're looking at here, this is a FiberTech generated report. So, but regardless of who you're using, whether your equipment is being maintained by the OEM, Olympus, Stryker, whoever, or whether you're using FiberTech or another third party, most companies out there can or should be able to provide you with some statistical data, okay? The whole theory, again, back to the whole the word proactive, you can't be proactive if you're not measuring what currently is occurring, okay? You can't fix what you don't understand is broken to begin with, okay? So this here is an example of the type of report that we generate from our FiberTech system, and it basically ranks, it's a repair trend analysis. So our customers can see what type of damage they're having, how many occurrences they've experienced of that specific type of damage year to date, and it even compares it to the previous year. So this type of data is, no matter who you're using for service, is what you should be keeping an eye on, and you should be looking to get reports like this in some fashion, okay? And again, it just goes back to understanding your equipment, what type of issues you're having, and you know, spotting a trend, and then being able to put together an action plan to, you know, kind of prevent this or reduce this type of damage in the future.
Thank you, Frank. This is a great time for you, as we're, you know, speaking here, to start thinking about when was the last time you met with the OEM who does your repairs, or the other partner that you may have, the non-OEM for it. When was the last time you sat down with them and really had a conversation about what do my repairs look like? What are my, as you see down here, the preventable ones that we can work on, and how can we work together to partner to educate people to understand, including our physician population for it. So thank you for taking this time. First of the year is always a good time to clean your house and get yourself organized, and it's a great time to get so that you can keep up with them throughout the years, a meeting at least, if not quarterly, at least twice a year, to go over your data so you understand where the opportunities are. All right, so if you have any other suggestions or things you've worked on for being preventive on the dashboard, please let us know. Now, this is my most exciting part. As Frank knows, I love to see what's inside the guts of equipment for it. So I'm going to let Frank go over his gruesome pictures of what damage looks like. So go ahead, Frank.
In the spirit of trying to keep this to an hour call, I chose 4 pictures, but as you all can imagine, there was hundreds to choose from. But no, if you look at this, so image number 1, it's actually, that's a camera head. Okay, so it's a Stryker camera head. You can't really see any specific damage to this picture, but I'm sure there's some smiles out there. And the comment I'm going to make about this is the number 1 issue with camera heads is damage to the cable. Okay, that cable, as you all know, if you've handled a camera before, is, you know, at least 6 foot long, maybe 6 to 8 foot long, and it connects the camera head back to the processor on the cart to give you an image. And I should have put a big X, a red X over top of this image, because this is not the proper way to store your cameras, okay? The cable is coiled up way too tightly. It's putting a lot of it, you know, this particular photo here is demonstrating excessive pressure on that cable, which is going to cause it to kink and cause interference with the image. So, you know, imagine a big X on that photo. That is not the way a camera head should be stored. But I can tell you, I spend a lot of time, my team spends a lot of time inside of facilities and surgery centers, and this is, you see this quite often. My advice would be when you are coiling up this cord to the camera, I'd say keep it about the size of a steering wheel. You don't want to loop it any tighter than the size of a steering wheel, or let's call it about 12 inches. And I think that keeps it in a safe position to avoid damage and kinks and things of that sort. Image number 2 just looks like a bunch of parts, but what it's really demonstrating is that's actually a power piece. For those of you that might deal with the TPX drivers, this is a piece of power equipment that came in, wasn't working properly. It was opened up, and you can see inside of basically the rust, the debris that came out of the gears and came out of the, it came out with the inner components of this power tool. So at some point, this was flooded and exposed to water, and created all kinds of issues with its performance. So it's interesting and sometimes surprising when you open up a piece of equipment what can come out of it. So again, just demonstrates what could happen on the inside of a power tool when it gets flooded or has external damage to it. Image number 3. Hard to tell what that might be, but that is actually a magnified view of the distal tip of a rigid endoscope. Okay, you can see all around the edges. That's a combination of and this what makes this such an interesting photo. There's a combination of things going on here, and it is laser damage from laser burns. Okay. And actual metal damage from a shaver, okay, that was utilized during a procedure that was not far away enough from the tip when it was activated, causing this type of damage to the tip. Now, to the naked eye, it might not look this bad, but again, under magnification, you can truly see how not handling the equipment properly, following the correct IFUs, what type of damage it can cause to a scope. And then image number 4, that's the distal tip of a flexible endoscope. And it's just pointing to some common issues that we see at the tip of a flexible scope. In the previous slide, I referenced glass lenses at the tip. You can see the lenses there. There's 3 of them. You can see the opening of the biopsy port, which is on the left-hand side of that image. And then you can see what this slide is really trying to point out are the seals that are missing. Those lenses at the tip of the endoscope are sealed with an adhesive type sealant. It's not to hold the lens in, but it's to prevent debris from building up around the edges of those lenses. And they are also there to help prevent reflection during the procedure, to stop reflection from getting into the glass and into the image components of the scope there and the lights. So it all kind of ties together. But here you can clearly see that those seals are missing or peeling apart. And that is something that's very common. I can tell you from experience, I could walk into any facility today and look through, if I look through a dozen scopes, I'm sure I could find 1 or 2 that have seals that are either completely missing or half missing. And, I point that out as a potential cleaning hazard, and not to scare anybody with that word, but it really can be a potential cleaning issue. And those are things that should be routinely looked at and taken care of in a timely fashion.
Well, thank you, Frank, for that, especially pointing out number 4. I think that's very important. We're challenged with cleaning those flexible scopes and, taking that time to kind of look at it, even with the naked eye, and kind of get an idea. We do have magnifiers we're supposed to be using in that area. So thank you for sharing that. Well, sharing your gruesome slides with me as I tell you. So, all right, next slide. If you, again, please feel free to make a comment in the chat room. All right, so with this resolution to what red flag number 2, what can the clinical staff do to help reduce the equipment damage for it? So I know, Frank, to start out with, you all have a facility audit practice that you do. And certainly as you go through some of that, I can go through some add-ons from a clinical perspective. So
Yeah. Yeah. So we're broadening the discussion here to all types of equipment, not just flexible endoscopes, but I think these are 4 areas that any location should. I call it an audit. At FiberTech, we call it an audit where we would go out and we would audit the facility, and we look at areas of handling and storage and transport and cleaning, areas that could be causing damage to the equipment, and simply just not being performed properly. So, and you'll be surprised some of the more simple things that can be spotted when you look at or tour a facility from that viewpoint. But certainly the first area is equipment storage. Again, whether it be a flexible scope, a rigid scope, everything needs to be stored properly. And if it's not stored properly, it's an area where damage could be occurring. For example, flexible endoscopes typically hang in closets. Over the years, there's lots of occasions where you would go in and the closet's just not, high enough off the ground, the rack, and the tip of the scope is hanging on the ground. It's not what you want to see. It's an area that damage could cause, and fluid can collect down there. It might not drain properly. It could be, cause different issues. But again, you shouldn't be storing stuff back in its original case. I think, everything should have its proper position. It shouldn't be put back in a box, back in a case, and up on a shelf, okay? So equipment storage is certainly one area. Refer back to the manufacturer of the equipment and what their recommendations are, what the industry recommendations are, and quite honestly, whether it be us or another third party or OEM, what our recommendations are. So proper equipment storage is certainly very important. Equipment transport. How is the equipment being transported, from SPD up to the departments, back to SPD, from the cleaning room into the procedure room, and from the procedure room back to the cleaning room? What are your handling techniques? What is it being transported in? Is it in the proper bin? Is it secured safely? You want to make sure there's not other equipment piled up on top of something that may be delicate. A lot of times we'll see a flexible endoscope with everything else used during that procedure in a bin piled up on top of it. Not something you want to do. Or when a flexible scope goes back into the tray, a lot of those sterilization trays, if not all of them, they have clamps inside that you can properly secure the equipment inside. And is the equipment by all staff members being put back in the tray properly and clamped in place before transport? Some of that leads back to education. You might have somebody new up in the OR department that wasn't familiar of how to place that piece of equipment back in the tray. And if you spot it, if you see something, say something, right? You need to get the message back up. And hey, we're starting to see trays come down. The equipment's not properly put back into the tray, or scopes are coming down with other power drivers and everything else piled up on top of them, or cameras coming down in the bin, coiled up too tightly, like we saw in that previous picture. So all of these things do occur and can occur during the transport of it, and it's something you want to pay attention to. Also, cleaning and reprocessing. Again, just want to make sure that everybody handling the equipment, including the cleaning room, understands the delicate components of it, and are handling it safely and properly. And then a little plug here at the end for flexible scopes again, the good old leak testing. I'd be misrepresenting everybody if I didn't bring up leak testing. And one of the most important things that you've heard before with a flexible endoscope is leak testing. It's the difference between catching a leak and not catching a leak and continuing to use the instrument and leading to a $5,000 repair or more, which could have been a $500 repair if you simply would have caught the leak. So probably one of the biggest budget busters, I call it.
absolutely, Frank. Thank you for that. If you have a best practice you're doing now with your facility, especially on transportation, please share that in the comments. We'd love to share it with the rest of the team for it. Next slide, please. All right, we have another poll question coming up, right? Oh, no, is this our poll question? Oh, no, we're going to talk a little bit about being proactive versus being reactive. So just a quick reminder, when you're reactive, you're always in a scramble. You have some fire drills, last minute fixes that you have to do. If you're more proactive, then you have some plan checks that you're doing. Everyone has an ownership mindset, and that you have standard work processes to manage your equipment, your instruments, and your scopes on both the transportation, the hanging of the scopes or the storage of it, as well as for the cleaning process. We'll go to the next slide. All right. What does it look like? What does good look like? Well, obviously good looks like when you have a properly trained staff, you have ownership mindset, standard work processes, and that you have visible KPIs that you can measure to find out what your concerns and issues are, just like when they look at KPIs of the instruments and the equipment coming in, so that you can have an understanding of where your trends are, what are your number one problems, and what could be leading to those for it. Frank, I don't know if you want to add anything here. If not, we'll go to the next slide.
No, I think we're just
Very well
reinforcing
said,
the importance of education and making
Yeah.
sure.
Education and communication. You're exactly right. And ownership mindset, like you said too, making sure that if you know something's not right, go ahead and get it fixed and bring up that subject you need to take it out for repairs.
Mhm.
All right. Red flag number 3, equipment readiness, right? Efficiencies and delays. One of the things that are very important as you're looking at your repair and really starting to re-clean your house for this year as we're beginning the new year, go through what was happening last year and what your plans are for resolution of best practices this year. One of the things we just want to talk about just quickly is some of the efficiency delays. Sometimes we have too many KPIs. Sometimes we are looking at things and we have so much on our plate, so many things to measure, but we're not really looking at maybe things that we need to look at, and also things that we need to be measuring for quality and for safety that potentially can show us where the problems are. Number 3 for the efficiency delays is also when you have a lot of data, sort of what Frank showed you, you may be sharing with a customer or not getting it shared with you as a customer what the problems and concerns are. So if you don't have the data, then you're not able to learn or to know what action to take. And then the last thing is having no visibility into repeat failures. The great thing about developing a partnership with your repair company, again, whether it's an OEM or whether it's a secondary repair company, repairs that you're in a relationship with, is really meeting with them to really gain that partnership, talking about what your concerns and issues are, where are you trending, and where can they help you with for education. Frank, did you want to add anything to this? If not, we'll move to the next slide.
No, I would just say it takes a village, and
Takes a village. I knew you were going to say that. I was waiting for you to say it.
you should be working with, even if you are working with a third party, the OEM, it's their equipment, they should still be there to support you as well. And you really need to lean, I think my advice to all customers is lean on everybody in your network to make sure that you get the right education and the right programs in place.
Thank you. Great comment. If you have a comment, please put it in our chat room. The next slide, please.
Yeah, equipment readiness.
Yes, so the equipment readiness, ask yourself these questions. What equipment do I use the most? What repairs happen more often? And where do I see repeat failures? Anything you want to add on to this, Frank?
Yeah, again, I'm sure we can all see there's a common theme here, right? So, always be asking, you got to ask the right questions, and hopefully we're giving you today some right questions to be asking. What equipment is used most? Do you have the right equipment in inventory? Okay. Do you have the proper amount of equipment in inventory? We often see when the inventory is not adequate to meet the demand of the caseload, it's overworked, it's overused, it's rushed, it doesn't have time to be, maintained properly, and bad decisions are made. And so I know probably many of us on this call are not, don't have control over adding new equipment to the inventory, but you certainly can raise your hand and push it up if you understand and know that you need new equipment. And again, back to monitoring the data and the statistics, what types of repairs are occurring the most? And where do the repeat failures occur? It reminds me, was going to share a story. I don't know if it was at this stage or not, Betty, but
I was going to say, could you share your story? Because I think this will be impactful for our audience.
I think it's a good time for it. So,
Yep.
again, understanding where failures occur. I've had several clients over the years, but one comes to mind just a few months ago. We had a urology clinic that was having an excessive amount of scopes, flexible scopes coming in damaged with broken bending sections. And we, to the tune of, they couldn't keep them in stock. I mean, every 3 or 4 a month coming in for repair, we'd fix it, we'd get it back, and 3 or 4 weeks later, the same scope was back broken again. So I went out there to spend a day with them and try to help them pinpoint and figure out why and where was this occurring. And so I spent a day there shadowing the entire facility. And I think the point that I'm trying to make is sometimes you need to take it to this level in your own facility to try to determine where the damage is occurring. Back to something I said earlier, you can't fix it if you don't understand where and how it's happening, right? So in this
Frank, don't give the answer now. They're going to vote on the answer. The answer to what you discovered. Don't give it yet.
There you go. So I will not give the answer.
Okay. So as Frank is sharing a story with his urology clinic, we have a poll question for you. Based on Frank's real life example, where do you think they discovered during his observation where the damage was recurring? Did it happen during the procedure, during the cleaning of the equipment, or during the transferring, the transit part? Go ahead and vote now. And let's take a look. Linda will show us what you guys have answered. Okay. Oh, split 40-40 during the procedure, during the cleaning. Frank, you want to tell us where you discovered it in your observation? Thank you, Linda.
Pretty interesting there.
It's a good split.
You know, I said earlier, I used the line, it takes a village. It takes a village to support you guys, and it takes a village sometimes to break equipment too, right? So, and in this particular scenario that I was telling the story about, I determined that the damage was occurring during the procedure. So it was basically heavily used equipment, a lot of different physicians, and it was with the small diameter uretoscopes in urology. They are extremely fragile, and if you with poor technique during a procedure, they break very often. So in this particular scenario, 40% of you got it correct. It was during the procedure here. Yeah.
Go ahead, Frank. But you know, that's a great point. So we would love to see how you all have dealt with that in your clinical situations, how you were able to deal with when it does happen during a procedure, what steps you take. So Frank, that was a great story. Thank you for sharing that with us. We're going to go on to the next slide to talk about improving, your hospital with performance data. This is just an example of the data that we work with our partners who are in with us as partnership with Surgical Solutions. Data is so important, and also making sure you're measuring the right data. As Frank has told you, as I've shared, as you all know, it's important to understand your data, what is your trends, and what can you do to make an impact to keep them positive. So just a quick snapshot on the data that we also collect in our organization, just like Frank does. If there's no, we're gonna go ahead to the next slide. If you have a question, please put in the chat. Does this sound familiar to you? Issues keep reoccurring. You're not sure why. You're tracking performance, but you're not seeing improvement. Your team spends a lot of time collecting data. I know I have to listen also with our team, talking about data and collecting it. But when they see the outcomes of how they can see the trends and change, it makes a huge impact for it. And you feel like sometimes it's so inconsistent and you're always reactive and not proactive. So if this sounds familiar and you need help, just like Frank said, it takes a village. So we're here to help and be a part of that, just as other peers who are on this call. Hopefully we'll learn more through the chats and the questions. again, let you know that you're not alone. It's not a failure to bring an expert to help you, just so you know that. It takes a lot of people and support to understand and to see what we can do for improvements. Every hospital faces these challenges. Every company faces these challenges. So again, you're not alone. If you need anything, we're here at Surgical Solutions. Frank's there with FiberTech to help you, and many of your people on this call today are peers that can also help. Next slide. All right. We're going to thank you all very much. Thank you, Frank, for your time. We're going to wrap it up with some questions and answers. Linda?
Yes, thank you, Betty. We've got a few that have come in. The first question is, now, if a hospital wanted to get started with these suggestions right away, what is one small change you'd recommend to improve equipment readiness?
Frank, you want to go first, and I'll be happy to chime in. What would you recommend if they had one thing that they could start working on immediately? I have an idea. If you want me to start, I'm happy to.
I mean, I would say 3 come to mind. I don't know the order of importance, but I would say one is back to the beginning of our conversation when we talked about an audit. You know, and an audit could just, in simplest terms, you know, just walk around your facility and look at yourself with a notepad and just look at the areas, the things that we spoke about. You know, look at the storage, watch some things being transported down the hall. You know, that's one thing that you can do immediately to see if you spot right off the top any inefficiencies or hazards in that sense. And then the other thing would just be when was the last time your staff had an in-service? I do a lot of in-servicing, and my team does a lot of in-servicing, and it is kind of still surprising when I'll get into a facility and they say, we haven't had an in-service in 2 years. I think it's, you know, that's something you can do right away. Most companies, the OEMs, don't charge for it, and just get it scheduled. And even if you have senior folks that have been there for 10 years, I would still have an in-service once a year, just as a refresher, just as an awareness campaign, and remind people on some of these handling items.
Frank, I was going to say the same thing you did too. I think observation is very important. You know, put on your scrubs, go back there, take a look at what's going on, follow a tray, follow an instrument, follow a piece of equipment, just to kind of see what's going on. And you don't have to make it so the staff feels that they're like, you know, being observed. You can engage with them. You can say, hey, I'm learning, just trying to understand it so that I can make our work better for them and engage them into it. They'll be happy to give you some suggestions for it. And then even ask the staff, what would you like this year? What gives you heartburn when you're working? You know, what causes you angst? You know, just letting them be a part of what KPIs you're looking at so that you're collecting meaningful data. You know, why can't they get started? What are their barriers that they see? And being able to measure things that they can be included in, but also will make an impact to their work is another good idea. So that's a great question. Whoever asked that, thank you so much. And of course, we're available. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us. We're happy to, you know, help you with some suggestions. We see some best practices across the country. Any other questions, Linda?
Yep, another one that's just popped up is, for facilities that do not track a lot of data, what is one equipment metric that is most helpful to start with?
What do you think, Frank?
I would start with I would start at looking at what piece of equipment is going out most frequently.
Right, you're in my head today.
And focus on that, of course. And then I would drill down from that. Okay, so yeah. what items are going out? I would first rank them and look at what items are going out most frequently and what seems to be the most common type of damage with that item. And how many times has it went out in the past 12 months? That is.
The other thing you can do is look at the most costly item, right, too, Frank? Maybe you can look at a bill from last year. What was your most costly repair that you had? And really dig into that information. You can do that too also. But I agree with Frank. Looking at, you know, the frequency of what item is going out. Sometimes you could have a lemon, to be honest with you, but lots of times you're going to find that there's something that's contributing to it, just like the urology story. Not to jump in on you there, Frank, but I also think looking at what is my #1 item that I sent out last year that cost me a fortune to fix.
Yeah. And I wouldn't, I would add to that, I wouldn't focus, obviously you have to look at cost as well. But I wouldn't put a lot of emphasis on cost on the first pass, because keep in mind that even inexpensive repairs are still repairs. It's still a piece of equipment that comes out for service, might be out of commission for 5, 7, 10 days. So whether it's an expensive repair or minor repair, it still creates the same type of issue. Equipment not there, not ready, not available. So
disrupting your day. Disruptions. A great question, whoever asked that. Thank you. And is there another question, Linda?
Yeah, we've got a scope repairs question here. Are level are level 3 and 4 scope repairs needed suddenly, or are there any warning signs teams should look for?
That's a good question. So, yeah, I mean, there are times when something major can occur suddenly, for sure. Mostly accidental, perhaps it was dropped or flooded, and that was, of course, all of a sudden. But there are a lot of cases where, if you recall, we've been talking a lot about being proactive. There definitely are many scenarios where, if the equipment is being properly checked along the way, having routine PMs or inspections on the equipment, a lot of things you can spot and have it addressed early on before it becomes a sudden major repair. For example, tight control knobs on a flexible endoscope. If the control knobs are tight today and you notice it and you know they're tight, and you keep using it, eventually that cable is going to snap. That's what's going to happen next. It could be a week from now, it could be a month from now, but that cable will snap. So again, that's just one example. But if you were paying attention, checking the scope properly, you would have avoided that all of a sudden major repair. But again, they're fragile instruments, so you will always have some amount of, oh, I didn't expect this today, and it happened today.
Yeah. And I'll add on for the flexible scopes. If you look at, take a look at ST91, there's a lot of proactive looking at your equipment in advance or during the cleaning process to make sure. One thing that we discovered in one of our GI scopes is that through the bore scoping process, we saw a little clip that was left behind, and that could have been a big damage if we had not seen that forward. So I remind you to go back, look at your IFUs, also look at what the recommendations are by Amy and our standards, to look at how we are proactive in our cleaning process with some of our look at even in our level, so that we can get the help before it becomes a disaster.
Yeah. I will mention here, since we're near the closing, I do have my email here. So we do have an inspection sheet of common things to inspect on a flexible endoscope. So if anybody on the call is interested, feel free to email me, and I'll be happy to just send you a copy of it.
Yeah. And also on mines, we have we do instrument tray audits, and we also believe in tray tracer. So those are things that you can reach out, and we'll be happy to speak to you about some. We look forward to talking to you about what we can do. It doesn't cost anything to just have that chat, right? For it. So we also, as addition to Frank, are more than happy to help and give you some best suggestions. Another question? I think we have like 2 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, one more we can squeeze in.
Okay, we'll squeeze it in.
Yeah. How can hospitals make sure equipment, especially scopes, are being handled properly across different teams and shifts?
That's a great question. Frank, you want to bring that on? You?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The question kind of answered itself a little bit. So, yes, you want to make sure that education, everything that we talked about today, whether you're in the SPD department or the OR or same day surgery or wherever you may be, you want to make sure that this education, this message is being distributed amongst all departments where the equipment may flow through. Okay. So the best thing you can do is, and again, sometimes it's the manager above you that is over the entire facility that would be able to coordinate. You want to make sure you give the same in-service. If I was managing a location, I would say, look, we want to in-service SPD, OR, NGI with the same in-service, with the same message, because they all handle the flexible scopes. And want that continuity of understanding across the entire facility.
Thank you, Frank. That's a great suggestion. Linda, do you want to wrap us up and about our CEU?
Yes, thank you both so much for your time today and for such a great and informative presentation. Now, if you'd like more information about today's presentation and sponsor, please visit surgical-solutions.com. As promised, the answer to today's trivia question is New England. So congratulations to our winner, Alison Leak in Indiana. Just a quick reminder, you can obtain your certificate by completing the post-webinar survey, which will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your certificate, and you'll be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach me at webinar@mdpublishing.com. Now, please visit ortodaywebinars.live for more details of all our upcoming webinars and, of course, complimentary registration. Now, just a quick reminder, if you have missed any of our past OR Today webinars, including any by Surgical Solutions, you are still able to view them on our website, ortodaywebinars.live. So thank you all for your time today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.